All right, so those are just a funny videos for you. But today I'm so excited because Pastor Lydia is going to be talking to us all about the Old Testament. I love the Old Testament. It's also called the Hebrew Bible. She's probably going to tell you more about that. But I feel like we're all going to learn something today. So Pastor Lydia, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next 15 minutes. Do you think you can do the whole Old Testament in 15 minutes? That's the hope. All right, I'm going to give that to you.
You can try and time me. I may fail, but we'll try this out. Okay, hold on 1 second. Oh, no, don't start the timer yet. I literally brought it with me just in case, so I don't overtime. But I'm just going to leave it on the floor, since it looks like people are going to for me. Okay, hold on. Let's see if I've got a... Do I just click it? Yes. All right. Hi, everybody. I am Pastor Lydia Kim. I'm one of your pastors at Connection and Care. Basically, that means I'm here to pray for you and to help you get connected to the church. And so I'm normally here at 7:30 in the morning, and you can find me hanging out over there normally. So that's a little bit about me, and we are going to get started. I'm excited. Okay, so. Oh, hold on. It might take longer than 15 minutes because I don't know how to work the clicker. Yes. Okay, so here are the 4 things we're going to talk about today. What is the Old Testament? Why we study the Old Testament? I'm going to go through some of the books of the Old Testament, and then I'm going to give you 3 takeaways about our discussion, and that's it. So hopefully we can get that done. Okay, so the Tanakh, can you guys say that? Tanakh. That is literally what our Hebrew brothers and sisters would say is the Old Testament. For them, it's actually the Hebrew Bible, just like Pastor Shannon said. But for us, it's our spiritual history. So that's part of the reason why we study it. So what exactly is the Tanakh or the Old Testament? It is literally 39 books, or back in the day, it would have been written on scrolls, just like that above, and it's divided into 3 parts. The Torah, the Ketum, and the Navaim. So Hebrew words, but basically it's divided into 3 parts, and the idea is that the scribes and the prophets who put this together thought that it was inspired by God, and it was written by humans in a very specific place and time for very specific people. And it tells the story of Israel. So originally these stories would have been passed down word to word, just like now, and later on they were written on scrolls, like that thing above, and 40% of it is stories, like literally narrative stories where someone goes, in the beginning, God created the world. And then there's also things like poetry, hymns, prayers that are also part of the Bible, the Hebrew Bible. So what it's not is the OT is not, thank you, the Old Testament is not an owner's manual. So I don't know about you when you get your car or they don't have owner's manuals anywhere when you get your phone, but I don't know about an owner's manual that has poetry in it. So this is definitely not an owner's manual. It doesn't tell you how to live life exactly word for word and what to do when this and this happens. And so I want you to remember that this book was written for specific people in a specific time and in a specific culture. And it's not a book where every character that we consider important is a hero. There are good characters and there are bad characters, and good things happen to good people, and bad things happen to good people as well. And the most important thing is the hero of the Bible, whether it's the Hebrew Bible or the entire Bible in general, is actually God, not the characters that we read about. All right. Okay, so the Tanakh or the Old Testament, you'll see on one side the ancient Jewish tradition, it divides it into 3. The later Christian tradition that we're part of divides it into 4. And that's really just for study purposes, but I'm going to talk about it in the way that the Jewish brothers and sisters talk about it. So we're going to talk about it in 3 parts. So I just wanted to let you know that. But also, too, the word Pentateuch up there is the same as the Torah. It's literally the first 5 books of the Old Testament. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So just a little Bible quiz for if you ever get trivia night, that'll be on there. So why do we study the Old Testament? So we study the Old Testament because it tells us more about who God is. And it also tells us about a relationship with God. As mentioned before, the Old Testament is our spiritual history. So we can learn a lot about how God interacts with our Jewish brothers and sisters in the Bible. Second, it connects us. And it doesn't connect us just to our Jewish brothers and sisters, but it also connects us to our Muslim brothers and sisters. Because foundation and groundings of the Old Testament, those stories, especially about Abraham and Sarah, are actually the same stories that ground their faith as well. So that's just a cool connection that we have with them. It's not just for Christians and Jewish people, but also Muslims as well. Lastly, we study the Old Testament because of Jesus. If you want to know more about Jesus, here's the key. You need to know about the Tanakh, the Old Testament. Jesus is the answer to a lot of the problems that happened in the Old Testament, and Jesus is also he basically studied this stuff growing up. So Jesus, it says in Luke 24:44, "These are my words that I spoke to you while I was still with you, that everything written about me in the law of Moses, the prophets, and the Psalms must be fulfilled." And then he later goes on to say in Matthew 5:17, "Do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill." So Jesus' ministry was continuing what was written in the Old Testament. All right. So the first section of the Old Testament is the Torah. Like I said, these are the first 5 books, and if you ever hear it, it's also called the Pentateuch for us, Christians. So Torah kind of divides up into various parts. It starts with creation, and we get to hear about that in Genesis 1-11. And I think you all know the creation story of, God created the world, the heavens and the earth in 7 days, and also created, or 6 days, and also created people and then rested on the 7th day. So Genesis 1-11 isn't an ancient history lesson, but it's actually meant to teach us about the human condition. Like if you think about Adam and Eve, they messed up. They knew God, but they still messed up. And in the same way, we mess up too. Genesis also kind of tells us why things are the way they are. For Jewish people, why are there trees and why are there plants and why are there things in the ocean? So Genesis 12 is where we start the story, a very specific story about God and God's relationship with these people. And those people are the Israelites. And so we see in creation that God created people, and he wanted people to rule the world, to have dominion over the earth, and to help it grow and to keep order. But people caused problems. And then the solution for that was a new kind of person, a new human being. And that's where the story of the Israelites begins. So Abraham and Sarah are the parents to Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And God basically makes them a promise, what we call a covenant, to bless them and to bless their family. And so all throughout the Torah, the first 5 books, you hear about their messy family. These people are not perfect, my friends. You get to hear all about their stories, about their kids, about their grandkids, their great-grandkids, and how all of their choices ends them in Egypt, where they end up being slaves. So Exodus through Deuteronomy tells us about the identity of the Israelites, and that's where you get this big character named Moses who's up there with holding the big slabs of the 10 Commandments. And basically God shares with us how he delivers his people from slavery through Moses and what it means to be people of faith looking for a promised land. And so, also in these stories, God gives them the law that Jewish people follow. And let me tell you, there's a lot. 613 laws that help us to become better people. It's a lot of laws. If you want an instruction manual, you can read through those. Whew. All right, the next section is the Navaim, which is basically, for Christian tradition, we split that into history and prophets, and I really want to talk a little bit about prophets. So, have you all seen a Magic 8 Ball before? Okay, or you don't like them. Okay, good. I don't really like them either. They never tell me the truth. So, a prophet is not a fortune teller. They're not a soothsayer. They don't look into crystal balls or Magic 8 Balls and tell you what's going to happen 10 years down the line. And they're not experts of divination for any of you Harry Potter fans. They don't look at tea leaves. They don't see dinosaurs in tea leaves, nothing like that. What prophets are social critics. They sounded the alarm that something was going to happen if God's people kept walking away from God. Literally, there were logical consequences. Like, if you do this, God's going to do this. And sometimes people listened, sometimes people didn't. They were the spiritual and ethical spiritual and ethical conscience of the Israelites. Whoa. I think you need a pause. Thank you. Okay, well then I'm going to go over 15 for drinking water. Okay. Thank you. So basically prophets, what they did was they told priests and kings about the near future. So what's going to happen if they kept doing this stuff? They were God's voice in the present, and they were also advocates. So we're talking about justice, freedom fighters here for the poor, women, the oppressed, the children, youth, and outcasts. Those were the prophets. So if you look in the Navaim, it's divided into two parts. There's former prophets and latter prophets. And you might hear people call them major prophets or minor prophets sometimes too. It's not like baseball. There is no major league, minor league. One is better than the other. It's really one is before and one is after, or one is got a longer chapter, like Isaiah has 66 books, and one has smaller chapters, like Micah has 4. Malachi has 4. So basically, it's just divided into parts, but the former prophets basically tell us more of the history of Israel. It's chronologically kind of in order, not necessarily, and it tells us of leaders who are good, like Joshua, King David, who we talked about, King David and Goliath, and also King Solomon. It also tells us about kings who were not good, like Ahab, who built a golden calf and told Israelites to worship it instead of God, and Abimelech. Now, Abimelech, he's a great case study on the worst sibling rivalry ever. He killed 70 of his brothers and sisters so that he could be king. Obviously not a good guy. So during this time, Israel fought with itself, it fought with other people, and ultimately they lost everything and were exiled in Babylon because that kingdom won out, and they were left wandering in Babylon, and they lost everything, including the temple. So the latter prophets, they continued the social criticism, and they pointed out hope of a future king who they called the Messiah, somebody who was going to be like King David and Moses. And so just so you know, the people writing and putting this all together, they already knew that this had happened. They had already lived through all of this exile and stuff. So they were putting this together for people who were living in their current times about stuff that happened before, just to keep that in mind. Because if you read the Bible, Moses didn't bury himself and also write his book. So the last part of the Old Testament is called the Ketuvim, and the Ketuvim is the writings. This consists of the songs, the poems, the hymns, and the sayings, and some stories about individual people and their relationship with God. So the Ketuvim is actually like what we call the heart of the Old Testament. If you open up your Bible, it literally is the middle section of your Old Testament. So literally, it starts with Job, which is this epic poem, kind of like Homer and the Odyssey, and it addresses questions of suffering, of doubt, and grief. The Psalms are a collection of hymns and prayers. It basically is like all the feels that the Israelites had about God and about their situations. And then the wisdom scrolls, which are like Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Songs, they're like conversations about living wisely for God. It's not necessarily advice, but just like little snippets of truth, and it talks about seasons of life, and also about what, like for Song of Psalms, it talks about love and desire in marriage, the way that God sees it, and the way that the people of God saw it. The other books in the Ketuvim don't necessarily follow the chronological order, which is why they're here. And like I said, they're individual stories, so it's like Esther and her story with God, or Daniel and his story with God. And lastly, the Old Testament in the Jewish version stops or ends with the Chronicles, which is basically if it's the short version of the Old Testament. So if you need like a really quick abridged version and you don't want to read all of it, you can start with Chronicles 1 and 2. Don't tell anybody I said that. All right, so I have 3 takeaways for you, and the first is the Bible is inspired by God, written by people in a particular time, place, and culture. There are going to be parts of it that don't make any sense to you, and you're just going to be like, what up? Like, I don't believe that at all. Like, slavery, not cool. But it's there because back in the day, it was there. So there'll be certain parts that will be confusing, certain parts that'll make sense, and certain parts that you wish weren't there. Second, the Old Testament tells us the story about who God is and our relationship with God. Like when you read stories, you can oftentimes put yourself in the place of the person in the story, whether it's like Harry Potter or like, I don't know, Divergent. You can kind of see yourself in the story sometimes, especially when it's a good story. And in the Old Testament, we see people who love God, who get it right sometimes, and sometimes who don't get it right. And it shows how God steps up to the plate every time to be in relationship with people. Lastly, learning about the Old Testament is important because it helps us learn more about Jesus. Like I said before, Jesus' ministry was based on what he knew about the Old Testament. So learning about the laws and the rules in the Old Testament, learning about the Psalms helps us to connect with Jesus because Jesus would have read those things too. So that Bible that you hold in your hand or on your phone, Jesus would have been reading those same words. I mean, obviously in Aramaic, Hebrew, but still, those are things that have been with us throughout this long period of time. All right, so in closing, Scripture is really an amazing journey for us because we get to, when we read it, we're supposed to do it in community. It's not just to be a solo act. I mean, we obviously read the Bible in quiet time, but it's really like studying it is done together, and it's done out of love. So it's a tradition, like I said, that's been happening even before Jesus was born, and it's a tradition that will continue even after we're gone. So I'm excited for you guys to learn more about it in depth, and I am, just excited to give you this really quick version of it. So I am done.
Thank you. Do you guys want to all stay together in one group, or you want to break into little groups? We have some small group questions. Let's just kind of circle up here. I know here, even just kind of come on up to the front. We have a few questions to talk about what Pastor Lydia just talked about. All right, so let's just kind of circle up.